I'm Matt Bennett. I'm one of the co-founders of Optimal HRV. I get the great privilege of working with Dr. Ina Hazan and David Hopper. So, my background originally was in mental health. I did a lot of work with trauma, and one of my frustrations is I could never measure progress. We know we got this great term called post-traumatic growth about the healing process of the nervous system, the brain, the psychology with when somebody gets into treatment and starts to address their past trauma, but we couldn't quantify it. And if we can't quantify something, how do we know that it's happening? So when I started to learn about heart rate variability's ability to really measure, been the gold standard since the 60s to measure our body, our nervous system, our mind's ability to handle or recover from stress, I was sold. I didn't know I was going to start a tech company right away, but no, everybody else was focused on elite athletes at the time. So I wanted to bring this more into the mental health wellness space. And so here we are at ISNR, booth for Optimal HRV.
Well, and the world wasn't ready for me to become super YouTube famous either, but here we are. Um, yeah, and it's funny because there are so many folks who start, there's so many folks who have booths here who did start out in mental health who really found this as a result of necessity
Yes.
because they needed a way to train and get people out of like a place of the nervous system just being stuck, and then also wanted better tools for assessment so that we can do research, so that we can pair these two things together because they do go hand in hand. And the other thing that struck me from what you shared is like this idea that heart rate variability is a gold standard, right? And yet, to a lot of people, heart rate variability just seems like a fad. It's like, oh, yeah, now the Aura Ring is doing it. Now the Apple Watch is doing it. It's just some biohacker thing that everyone's jumping on this bandwagon. But, even though most medical doctors aren't necessarily going to be measuring it, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about that history and why it is sort of a gold standard.
Yeah, so since really the 1960s, Stephen Porges's work, that's where it really got popular. Been around for, we actually knew variation of the heartbeat back in ancient Greece. So we've known this exists, but it had clinical applications really starting in the 60s with it. But you had to go to a laboratory to get your HRV done. So all these research studies, people would go to a lab, one person would practice mindfulness, one would watch some neutral video, both of them would stick their hand in the bucket, our way of torturing from a research, and then we do a post-test measure of HRV.
We love to torture.
Oh, we love to torture people. I think researchers love to get the stress response to the surface. And so it's been around since then. The really exciting thing that's happened over the last several years is now with Bluetooth technology and that our cell phones have evolved the way they have, we can now get that at home. So if you think about all these peer reviewed journal article things on HRV, it may have been one or two readings. Now we can get readings every morning, every day, multiple times a day. So now all that science is on your wrist. So even for researchers, you go from maybe two HRV measurements, and that's your research paper, to now if you want to do research over time, well, you can do it for weeks or months to collect a whole different level of data on how the nervous system is doing. So this is where HRV may be seeming trendy to some folks is, well, now it's everywhere, but the technology has allowed it to be outside the laboratory for the first time.
So you're talking about, sort of daily check-ins on where the HRV is at. And in this course, we're using HRV biofeedback, where you're training, as a way to sort of rebalance the nervous system. So maybe could you just on a broad level describe those two things and what their value? I mean, obviously, if you're doing HRV training regularly every day, guys,
You guys.
you guys, then you're getting a sense for where your HRV is at. But maybe you could just explain, like, why would someone want to just measure it out of the blue? What are the benefits of that potentially?
How are you doing today? How are you doing this week? How is a new exercise program or way of eating or focusing on sleep hygiene or new medication impacting your overall health and wellness? Because your autonomic nervous system is controlling 80% of the body's functioning, and it's all, for the most part, unconscious. So, how are you doing? It's a quantitative, objective measure. You take your HRV score in the morning, tells you how you're doing today, and you can plan your day accordingly. You can see how you're doing this week. How are you doing this month? So it predicts 9 out of 10 leading causes of mortality. The only one it doesn't is car wrecks. And I bet if we were measuring it, it would be 10 out of 10. And so that's with the tracking part, it really is a metric of health. So if they come and see a coach like yourself or a provider, a medical provider, a mental health provider, and you're doing work with somebody, we should see improvements in heart rate variability over time. So it becomes an outcome measure for services. Then we got the whole exciting side on the biofeedback side, because not only can we use this to track overall health and wellness, but one of the best ways to improve heart rate variability around some of the other things I just mentioned with diet, sleep, exercise, et cetera, is HRV biofeedback. So we know, and it's called resonance frequency breathing, is we all have a specific breathing rate. So for example, mine is 4.5 breaths per minute. So you can do a quick assessment.
And bigger isn't better, guys. Everyone's number is perfectly fine. He's a 4.5. I'm like a 9 or a 10. It's no big deal.
I'm a little worried about 9 or 10, actually. We may need to talk afterwards, but yeah, there is no, it's a genetic thing. So what we know about right now, it's just I have mine, you have yours. One's not better than the other. Though I do have some argument why 4.5 is superior, but that's just personal, not research.
Yeah, we'll edit this out.
And so 14-minute assessment is all you need to establish your breathing rate. So very quick, and then you can use that through biofeedback, mindfulness, self-compassion activities, and you get feedback on how well that breathing, your focus on your breath is increasing your heart rate variability. We call it low frequency HRV. It won't be on the test, but we want to see that training is actually having an input. So we'll give you feedback during the session on, hey, you're reaching your training zone.
There's different research on these clinical conditions like ADD and ADHD with HRV biofeedback, but how do you see this fitting in for them?
Yeah. So first of all, there's a little drinking game you can play with HRV. Of course, we're drinking healthy supplement kind of drinks, good shakes and those sort of things. But Google HRV in anything, and I bet there's at least a 60% chance there's a meta study done on it now. So that's the really good news, is we got a lot of research to back this up. And for your kind of high performers who you work with, one of the things that I like to ask people is, well, I'm not struggling with trauma or mental health issues or this, that, or the other. It's like, does your life require you to be cognitively engaged and flexible? That's what HRV is measuring. Does it require emotional regulation? That's what HRV is measuring. Do you want to be socially connected with people in your life, both personally and professionally? If you're emotionally regulated, people will like you more. And then overall measure of medical health, as I mentioned as well. So we're measuring those three things. And the great thing about HRV biofeedback is because it's so impactful on our autonomic nervous system, we're supporting that emotional, social, cognitive, and medical health. So all those things being supported, if you can give us 20 minutes a day to do that practice, you're going to get some really great benefits from that as well. And if, hey, you want to try something like intermittent fasting, or you want to train for a marathon or other things your folks are doing, it can help you really craft your training, make sure you're not overexerting, make sure you're paying attention as much as recovery as pushing yourself, because most high performers need to show up. And too many high performers I know wear themselves into the ground. And when they need to show up, they can't because they don't have anything left in the tank. HRV is a good way to start to plan your days, your weeks. So when you need to perform at your best, like when somebody comes and sticks a microphone in your face with cameras, you can be your best self.
I have no idea what you're talking about. None of that made sense, but let me know in the comments what you think he's talking about. And so, it's interesting because we think of these sort of breathing exercises as kind of just being for relaxation. And I'm a big fan of HRV. And whenever it's like, well, is it going to make me feel tired? I don't exactly know how to answer that, because to me, it's like I might feel my sleep debt more, but I'm also going to feel more connected. So, like, how would you describe your experience of doing HRV as far as like how it changes your energy, your perceived state?
A great question. So, twofold. Again, when do you need cognitive focused, emotional regulation, social connection? We all need medical health all the time. So, I do two practices a day. One, I do it in the morning. It's my pregame workout, right? So, I'm doing about 20 minutes in the morning. I don't like wake up really excited about it, but it's my pregame workout. So you don't start a game cold. You don't get out of your car and then start running right away. You want to warm up a little bit. So for me, it gets me focused, emotionally regulated, ready to tackle the day. And then I do it at night as well before I go to bed. So again, that emotional regulation, I got the stress of the day on me, helps me get that stress, regulate that nervous system. So anytime you need to kind of be emotionally regulated, cognitively engaged, and obviously sleep, you're disengaging cognitively from the world, but it still puts you in a focused, relaxed state. But that those two things can go together, right? That I'm calm, but I'm bringing my best self to the work. If I'm stressed out or just hyped up on caffeine, I'm not being my best self. So really get you in that nice regulated state of mind. Doesn't mean you can't have coffee, by the way. Just maybe do your practice before you start to intake the caffeine.
Yeah, and that concept of regulation to me also means like having more sort of gears to shift through. Like when I'm on my training and I don't have a twice daily kind of thing, I'm still working towards trying to be consistent every day and not miss 2 days in a row. I'm proud of myself when I miss a day and I get back on the horse the next day. But it is sort of this interesting neutral kind of like supple space where you feel relaxed during it.
Yes.
I feel that like I get into the zone and I feel a sense of balance. But then it does change the rest of my day and as far as like feeling more options
Yes.
and also being able to fall asleep better when it's time to go to sleep. So it's interesting. So let's get into a little bit of the practical element. So this is a course. We have guys at home. We're sending them devices. Right now, we're actually using the heart math devices and hooking those up with the app on the phone. You guys, I know, have your own armband that you're using here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what this device looks like and why we should be testing it for our next rounds?
Great. So we have a wrist strap, so very easy to put on. Just slide it over your arm, put it on there. So pretty easy to use. Our app is designed to work with any device as well. Not everybody in the world has a device. So we wanted to bring an accurate, affordable, comfortable device to the market. So we were able to keep the price point under $50, which we're proud of. Really good, accurate device. But if you have polar straps sitting around or a heart math device, we work with that as well. Then you sign up for a membership of the app that range from $65 a year to $9 a month, depending on the membership you do, and then you have access to both the HRV tracking, which currently I believe, and I haven't tested heart math for a while, doesn't do a lot of the tracking things. We have resonance frequency. They use coherence, slightly different science. The resonance frequency brings in the reflex. So blood pressure, it's regulating that system as well. Finally, if you're working with a great coach or a not so great coach, but I'm assuming a great coach,
Yeah, mark that. We're gonna cut that again.
is that your coach can get your data to help you out. So we immediately upload that to the coach's database. Hey, if you want to compete against some other people, we don't encourage competition, but I know about high performers. Um,
That's what losers say.
I agree. Is that you can share that data with each other. So it really allows for coaches to see and track data. Still gives you the breathing exercises, puts the tracking on top of it as well.
So you have actually what I'm realizing quite a high level of interoperability, and that you have this app, you have your own device, but it's also working with other devices and giving the opportunity for that long-term tracking. Which, in addition to, doing the training, the tracking gives you a sensibility of how everything else in your life is impacting where your body's at. So I'm excited to get going with this, and we may be introducing this platform in this round of the course. Do you have any parting thoughts or advice for someone who's just getting started in biofeedback, neurofeedback, wanting to shift their nervous system?
I would say HRV biofeedback. I've been doing mindfulness for 15 years. I've been doing HRV biofeedback for about 3. My best analogy I can give, it's not the perfect analogy, but where mindfulness was like taking my autonomic nervous system to the gym, using resonance frequency breathing is like taking it to the gym on steroids. I just feel so much more of a benefit from my practice. My training's better. My wife loves me more because I'm less stressed out, which is always good. And so get your resonance frequency breathing rate. That I think is really key for anybody invested in their health. And then track it, whether you use our device, Aurora Ring, Whoop. There's a lot of great devices out there. Is just get that tracking and that biofeedback. It's just little things you can do to maximize your performance and your health. And again, if you can't find 20 minutes a day, you really need to probably find 25 minutes a day. So work this in, try to get a consistent practice because we know with neuroplasticity over time, you're actually changing how your brain, how your nervous system works. I'm a different person than I was 15 years ago. I can still get stressed out, but it just takes quite a bit more. And I usually recognize I'm getting stressed out before I do or say things that can get me in trouble, which I don't, I like to stay out of trouble. So that's where it's had a big impact on my life.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. And you're watching EEG World. And if you haven't done your training session today, I'm watching you. Thanks, man.
Awesome.